Alright, welcome back to the Supercoach Nuff channel. In this video, we're going to look at another Supercoach NRL team build for the 2026 season. And this one, we're going to look at the very traditional guns and cheapies build. So, I guess this stems back from the early days of NRL Supercoach where trades were a lot lower for the season. So we didn't have as much opportunity to chop and change through the players in our squad. So what tended to happen was we targeted the players that we wanted to keep for the season, or the guns, as well as those guys that would generate a lot of cash for us before we would trade them on. So the cheapies, um, I guess stars and scrubs is another way it's been known. Um, yeah, so I guess guns and cheapies basically. Um, so we'll have a look at what that sort of team would look like in 2026. Um, and we'll start with the hooker position. So at hooker we'd have a gun. In this case I've gone with Harry Grant, just slightly cheaper than Blake Brayley to start the season. Excuse me. I think after that, probably the use of the word gun might be a bit loosely um, sort of own or sort of bit loose there. Basically, I have tried to go with players 600k and above as guns, but we'll see a couple of exceptions to that as we go through. The cheapie option, pretty popular at the moment, Brandon Smith. Obviously, having a 235k player that looks like he has a good chance of starting, getting good minutes, dictionary definition of an old school cheapie. In the front row, the two guns, Payne Haas, Terrell May. So this obviously chews up a lot of budget, but at the same time, probably two players we do want by season's end. I guess the issue with Terrell May is he has a buy in round one, so you would be relying on a cheapie to play. However, in the age of the flex, it's not the biggest issue to have one player missing because you do have a flex score to pick you up. On the bench, I've gone with Cody Hotwood, Jack Hetherington, so both cheap. Obviously question marks around their game time to start the season, but if they did have roles in the 17 or potentially 19 for this season, um, you would pick them and they would just slowly make cash. Front row forwards not usually where you target a lot of cash gen. It is just guns and cheapies in this case. In the second row, I've gone with probably the number one gun in my opinion, and that is Big Tino. Albeit it sounds like he is going to start in the front row this year, so it could be dual position early doors, which would also be very beneficial for this sort of build without a lot of trades. But I guess there wasn't really a player in that cash range that we were looking at that quite fit that bill. I put Angus Crichton in as well. I have talked about him a bit in pre-season. Very keen for him to link up with Sam Walker once again. Now that Sam Walker is injury-free for the time being. So he would definitely be a gun that you could play and hold for the season. And then I guess one of the exceptions to the rule that I talked about, David Fafita. So obviously not priced as a gun, but we know what he has produced in the past. So, and looking at the budget I had left, I only had about 550k once I put the guns and the cheapies in. So he was the perfect sort of player to slot in to fill out the guns and cheapies squad. On the bench, Lasati, a bit of an elevated price cheapie, but under 300k definitely qualifies for this. Ryan Couchman, Cooper Buy. I've talked about in previous videos as options. Probably Buy is ahead of Couchman currently, but I do envisage them having a very similar role. I think just people very excited about Buy's potential upside from his work with PNG at the end of last year. Halfbacks are pretty standard build. Cleary and Ethan Sanders. don't know if I have to say too much about either of them. 5/8 it'd be Cam Munster as the premium option. He is a bit like Cleary. He is that sort of significant amount above average. And yeah, definitely considering trying to put him into my team moving forward. But we've got Jonah Pezzett as well on the bench, cheap option, pretty well a guaranteed role. We like that in our Guns and Rookies builds. In the centre wing, so this seems to be the place where there is quite a few cheapies being talked about. And traditionally also this was where we had a lot of cheapies because of that ability to score points in bunches, which elevates their cash generation quickly, and we can then roll them on to, flesh out the depth in our squad. Um, so with this build, I've only got two guns: Herbie Farmer, Jacob Kiraz. Pretty sure that's close to the top two options. Yeah, it is the top two options. I just had to reverse the trade to see that. Um, Obviously, you could consider any of Nwangani Tuase, Val Holmes, Kale Iro in this build as 700k options. All right, obviously we said anything over 600k is a gun, but I think in the centre wing you've got to go a little bit higher. Likewise at fullback, I think had to look a bit more around 700k. So I've gone with Tom Trbojevic, a bit of a cut price keeper, a cut price gun, I should say. Given James Tedesco is 170k more, Reece Walsh is up over 800k as well. So I guess if we put one of them in, old Dave Fafita would become another cheapie, and we'd be a little bit thin at second row. And then Dan Atkinson in the flex, just because we needed another cheapie, and we do have these two halfback cheapies that look like they've got really good job security. So I guess in the old Guns and Rookies system, it was all about job security because they were more likely to make cash over the long term. Also, they would cover your guns if they were injured for a week. Yeah, so bit of a quicker video. I've done a few today, so maybe getting a little bit tired. But yeah, just I guess a good chance to look at how we play the game a bit differently now with more trades. Obviously, we do look at a few more mid-price options as we can use them as stepping stones to these guns, given we do have a few more trades, and then we're probably not stuck with having to play a bottom dollar cheapie or, the both cheap halves and, a cheap flex. We can sort of distribute the funds a little bit wider to get a stronger starting 18. But I think that's all for this one. Pretty straightforward, really. Um, if you've got any questions, comments, thoughts, feel free to add them below this video. Give us a like if you enjoy the NRL content. Subscribe for all the fantasy sports content on the channel. The leagues, if you wanted to join in those, are in the description below. And other than that, we'll catch you in the next one.